Hello, welcome to our fourth fireside chat, our COVID fireside chats with some of the leaders in our community for OCD and anxiety. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you also for the wonderful feedback I've been receiving. Apparently, this is something that's really needed for people to help normalize and support where you're at in this unbelievable crisis we find ourselves in all over the world. Kind of in one way to look at it, it's the one thing that has actually connected all of us together all over the world. But in the other, I know that it's been trying, it's brought up a lot of emotions for people. So I really appreciate you being here and being here all week and being able to experience this alongside with us. My name is Chrissy Hodges. I am the founder, executive director of OCD Gamechangers. I'm also a certified peer support specialist in the state of Colorado, and I work worldwide with people doing peer consultation and peer coaching. And I'm also the author of Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. And I'm going to let Stu introduce himself, even though y'all know you don't need an introduction to Stu. Everybody knows Stu.
Well, not everyone. But yeah, so my name's Stuart Ralph. I live here in the UK, in England in particular. And about 4.5 years ago, I started the OCD Stories, which is a weekly podcast where I interview people like Chrissy, whether it's peer support experts, clinicians, therapists, researchers, people with OCD who want to share their story. It comes out every Sunday. And has done since December 2015. So I'm really proud to be approaching 5 years and continue to help some of you.
Mm-hmm. Stu and I have a podcast coming out in a few weeks, which is really exciting. And he has been able to interview just so many people, whether that's lived experience, experts who treat and research OCD. So he's also a member of the OCD Gamechangers board. So thank you for all that you do for us, Stu.
My pleasure.
A little bit about what we're doing if you're new to this, and then we're going to kind of go in and check in with both of us on how we're feeling. I got the idea of doing fireside chats from the OCD Game Changer event that happened a few weeks ago for the campfire chats. And I was feeling uncertain. I was feeling scared. I was feeling emotional, and those emotions are changing every day. And I thought, if I'm feeling this way, which basically drives my whole advocacy, if I'm feeling this way, I know other people are feeling that way too. So why not? Let's get together every single day and have a real check-in and chat with people who are living through this unprecedented. Every time I say that, I think about the Seinfeld episode where George goes, "There's no precedence, baby." Anyway,
I'm not a
Seinfeld people are going to know what I'm talking about. Anyway, and we have just really had a good time doing these every day. And I also wanted to announce, number one, the more chats we do over the next month and a half, the bigger my hair is going to get. There ain't nothing I can do about it, by the way, because I can't go get it cut and I can't get it colored. So there's that. And number two, I've had a lot of people reach out to want to continue doing these after this week. So we're all meeting as a board on Friday to decide moving forward how often we're going to do these, especially during this, really critical time where people are scared and uncertain. So that will be exciting to bring on more people in our community, more leaders and more influencers to be able to relate and be with you during this time of crisis where we're not really sure where the finish line is. So with that, that's what we're doing here today. There's no agenda. Stu and I are just going to talk. We're used to doing that all the time. So this should be pretty easy. But with that, Stu, why don't you check in with us a little bit? What has been your emotional response to what is going on, throughout since the beginning, which was basically 2 days after you left Denver, by the way.
Yeah, well, it did kind of whatever hit the fan, when I got back effectively. But it was already a thing, right? When I was in Colorado, we were fully aware of it. It was, well, obviously that was the very beginning of March. So it'd been going on all throughout February in the mainstream media, at least in my country. And but it was still kind of, people weren't really sure what to think of it, how serious it was or was going to be. And in a way, that I guess that kind of helped our event, because if people bought into it like they have now, they probably wouldn't have showed up.
I
So
know.
the timing was very lucky. I don't think anyone was ill, so hopefully no one spread anything, but no
I have
certainty.
heard nothing. I think everybody checks out clean for the OCD Gamechangers event. Yes.
Yes. Well, yeah. So, I mean, that was good. And then obviously got back to the UK a week later. There were flight bans, more and more restrictions from various governments, including mine. And it's very different. Like over here in the UK, it's the Prime Minister does, I'm not sure it's on the weekend, but he does daily briefings, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and this isn't, he never addresses the nation weekly or probably monthly. You know, we hear him all the time in the news and stuff, but this is him addressing the nation almost like we were at war, as if I link back to Churchill. Obviously, he was our prime minister during World War II. And he addressed the nation a lot and did all these great speeches, which you can find on YouTube. And funny enough, Boris Johnson, before he was prime minister, actually wrote a kind of not autobiography, but whatever it is when someone writes someone else's autobiography. Maybe it's still autobiography, but he wrote, I'm going to stick with it. He wrote an autobiography about Winston Churchill's life.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of weird. And I read a Guardian article today about how this woman wasn't particularly very pleasant about Boris Johnson, but she was saying how Winston Churchill was his idol, and now this is his moment to shine, to do those types of big dramatic speeches that could be remembered hundreds of years from now. And it could be his defining moment. And for me, I'm always interested in leadership, not just political, but generally. And this crisis, as with any big crisis, is going to really, the leaders are going to shine, you know, and the lead people who aren't ready are not. So there's going to be, you know, I think revealing for certain presidents and prime ministers around the world, and it's going to make some. But that's just my own interest. There's nothing to do with OCD. So for me, how it's affected, I guess, the daily briefings is just something that shows you the severity of this situation. And for the first, I was kind of fine. I was obviously washing my hands when I was in Denver, and I was slightly on edge. I was taking precautions, I think a healthy amount. Although actually before Denver, it did trigger me to the point where I started overwashing my hands, where they were cracking and started to sort of bleed. And contamination OCD hasn't been a huge issue for me historically. It's popped up here and there, but the hand washing thing hasn't as a compulsion. So for me to get to the point of where my hands start to bleed in only like 5 days of being triggered by the news, that was a real and that was before the news is where it's at now. That really kind of took me, kind of knocked me out. And it took me a few days to realize what was going on, and what I was doing was a compulsion here, and I was stuck in it. And that was because I'm hugely triggered, because at that point I was at work, and in where we have the lunch area, there's news on all the time. For some reason, that's what people decide to put on the TV. You know, I'll go to like kids cartoons or South Park or something if it's on in the day, or just anything sport, just because the news is good. But if I'm seeing it all day, every day, you know, that led me to the point where I couldn't escape it. So then I was doing the compulsion to deal with the anxiety. So when I caught it, I managed to kind of, I guess, response prevention, slow down the amount I was washing my hands. I was still washing it the right amount the government was suggesting, but I just wasn't doing it compulsively. And now my hands are a bit better and moisturized and stuff. They're fine. But that was an early indicator of the contamination issue. OCD has never been an issue for me, but here it is now becoming an issue, all because of a week's worth of media that I was allowing to flood me. So since then I got a bit better, and then when they started putting all the travel bans in, the restrictions, that made it really real, in the sense of this is affecting a lot of people, or they think it is going to. So from the emotional side of that, there was lots of anxiety again. I wasn't compulsively hand washing. I think I got it to the right amount of washing.
I thought I heard you singing "Happy Birthday" in the bathroom while you were here.
I think I might
washing your hands.
Yeah, I did do that initially, and I always do it to myself. So it's like it's a self-esteem booster at the same time as practicing good hygiene. But yeah, so the emotional side of things, I wouldn't say it's triggered OCD for me massively beyond that contamination incident. It's more triggered just general anxiety and worry. Yeah, my wife's pregnant, so that is a factor that amplifies things for me, of like making sure I don't catch it and I don't bring it into the home, making sure she's safe. And the evidence, there's not, I mean, people do your own research, don't trust me, but I don't think they're fully solid on what would happen to a pregnant woman yet. So it could be that they're not any more affected and it doesn't harm the baby, but we don't know. So that kind of uncertainty plays in my head of what happens if it is detrimental, which hopefully it isn't. That makes me be even more cautious about avoiding people, and keeping my, the government says however many feet distance. I like triple it just to be safe, which I guess you could call like a compulsion, but I'm doing what I need to do for my unborn child at the minute, and I don't see that necessarily as a problem. It's not affecting my life detrimentally, and I guess that's the key thing. And if it did become out of control, I would then put things in place once I realize it, and so I think that the uncertainty of that, but that when I got back from Denver, that first week where all those things came into place and the news were reporting on it, made it really hard. Like I almost like, what's the point in me? So I'm 2 years into my training to be a therapist, specifically working with children and young people. And I'm at the point where I'm doing my research proposal and I've got essays on, and I'm sitting down like trying to write it, and I'm like, kind of, what is the point in this overwhelming feeling of almost like there is no future. I know rationally that not to be the case.
Yeah.
But there was some kind of just it almost seems trivial, me doing my essays, and I went through stuff like that, and then I put things in place like I was only going to watch the news a certain amount of time a day, because I think it's good. It's ever changing, this situation, so it's good to be informed. But I think Grayson, when I did a podcast with him on the coronavirus, he talks, I can't remember the exact numbers he said, but he said what you can learn in 30 minutes of news is the same amount you'll learn in watching 13 hours of the news, but the difference is those extra 12 hours are just going to make you anxious. They're not going to inform you anymore. And that's kind of the approach I've taken to kind of limit the amount of news, just because it was affecting me too much. And that helps me focus a bit more. But then this week I've been much better. I've been really focusing on my research, also on the podcast and stuff, and been able to focus and start to enjoy my work again. A couple of things like, with what I said earlier, like, what is the point of me doing this research? Well, my research is focused around OCD and adolescents, or young people. And I thought, look, most of us will survive this. The overall, so so arguably this particular strand of the flu is temporary. We'll get vaccines and then we'll be fine. There might be other strands in the future that are going to hit us, hopefully for not a couple 100 years, so I'm long gone and I don't have to self-isolate again. But it's inevitable. The Spanish flu 100 years ago, these things, and you've got all the plagues back in history in London, all this stuff. So it's like recessions in the economy. They're going to happen. Recessions should, in theory, happen every 10 years. I'm not an economist, so take it with a pinch of salt, but they are frequent, and they need to happen for growth to happen again. Otherwise, if money was constantly growing, a house price would be 3 million for like a 1-bed flat. It doesn't make sense. So anyway, please pull me up if I'm wrong on that, any economists or finance people. But I think that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Massive backlash from the economists.
Yeah. They're too busy at the minute trying to save the economy. But yeah, what was I saying? So I thought, look, most of us will survive this. And at the end of the day, there's this thing called OCD that's going to continue to affect and torture people long after this virus has run its course. And I'm not belittling the virus, because it's a horrible thing and it's going to affect many families, and that's really sad. But my work is important. because we will go on, and OCD is still going to be there. And I think so the suffering isn't going to end. The coronavirus suffering will end, but there's other suffering that still needs to be dealt with. As there's whoever the people that create vaccines, those people right now are working tirelessly to end this suffering, but there's other suffering that needs to go on beyond that. And I think when I realized that, and maybe that's like a values thing of coming back to my mission and understanding why I do what I do, was like, no, this is really important. Yes, it's hard to focus because I'm worried about all these other variables about my wife and my own health and family and parents and stuff. But my research is important, and the work I do within this community is important, because people are still going to need it, whether they've been affected by the coronavirus or not, long into the future. And I think understanding that kind of allowed me to focus back in on my work and kind of have the emotions there, but do what I wanted to do in spite of those emotions, and whereas before I was letting them kind of paralyze me.
Well, and to kind of quote back to what Natasha Daniels was saying yesterday, that how a lot of people are going through different phases in this. And I think you just perfectly described just the phase of how you were able to process it, which I think is relevant to a lot of us. It was the skepticism, but then but I'm going to take precautions anyway, kind of on the fringe over here. And then all of a sudden this mayhem and panic, when it really set in that this is actually happening. I think John Hirschfield actually just wrote a blog on this. I haven't read it yet, but just something to the effect of mindfulness. This is actually happening now, where a lot of us were skeptical that it was going to turn into something bigger. But now you have kind of worked through kind of that shock factor. And then it's like, okay, now it's time to reset, and shit's going to happen, is going to get real. But I still have this mission. I still have my values, and I still have my goals, and I can't forget that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that seems accurate to you.
No, I think it completely does. And as you were speaking, I mean, I don't know how relevant it is, but like the quote came to mind of something like, this is me, where my brain goes of, and I don't like saying it because it triggers some people sometimes, but like the living with the uncertainty, which is the possibility of, I'll talk about myself, I could get the coronavirus and I'm perfectly healthy as far as I know. I'm still quite young. It could still take my life, right? Sure. There's that possibility. So kind of with that in mind, I try and like not take each day for granted anyway. And when things are all rosy in society and health, I still try and keep in the back of my mind this idea of one day, hopefully not for many, many, many decades, but one day I will die. That's inevitable, None of us can escape the grave. I know there are some people working on ways of like keeping people alive forever, but until they figure that out, it's coming for us all. As morbid as that may sound, but I think for me, that helps me live my life the best I can, knowing that it has an end, If I lived forever, my life wouldn't be special, it'd be boring. So kind of how I look, the quote that came to mind for me was, well, if death does come for me, let it find me climbing a new mountain and not an old one. This idea of, I can't remember who said it, but like, I love that of like, I don't know if this is going to do anything bad to me. If it does, I'd rather it come when I'm pursuing my goals and living by my values and living a life that's meaningful to me, than it come and find me just sitting there worrying about it. And that's not to judge people that are in that place, because we're all in different positions. But yeah, that's kind of just where I'm at personally.
Well, and if we want to really, I don't want to get into the death topic at all, but if we really want to talk about, the live forever and to not exacerbate, I guess, but just emphasize maybe what you're saying, go watch The Green Mile, people. Go watch The Green Mile. Because at the end of that movie, like, this guy is hoping for death, but I certainly don't want this fireside chat to go in that direction. Yeah. Just go watch it for entertainment instead of Contagion, by the way, because every on-demand movie right now is an apocalyptic, like, mass hysteria. Let's kill off everybody. I'm like, thanks a lot, on demand and Netflix. However, I've been watching them, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah,
there's that on Netflix. There's that documentary. I've watched the trailer, which looks really good, which is something like how to prevent or stop a pandemic. It's called something like that. and it looks really good, but like I've been hesitating watching it because it's too close to home right now. But that being said, that's probably I should watch it for that reason. Because look, I said I think it looks good, but I'm hesitant because of it's too close to home. My value says I'd probably enjoy it because I love those type of documentaries, but my fear is saying don't do it. So maybe I will watch it.
I keep watching Outbreak because I just love that movie anyway, and it never comes on demand for free. And B, it just, I think I'm just quoting it all the time now. I feel like I'm Dustin Hoffman, but not a scientist. Anyway, I know that. Yeah, that means let's move along because that wasn't funny. Anyway. Okay, I'll check in first, and then I have some follow-up question for you, actually.
Okay.
So in following every single day, I felt differently every day. Luckily, I went ahead and got a lot of my rants out before Stu and I went live, so I'm not going to be super negative. But if we're just going to keep real with these fireside chats on how life is changing and can change for people, my husband got laid off today or furloughed. For a certain amount of time without pay. And so, I'm not as worried as I could or should be, or we're not in a position where that's going to completely destroy our livelihood, but it really put things into perspective for me. And also, just really pisses me off and shifts how I'm viewing this. And not that I'm not taking it seriously, or not that I'm like, open everything back up so the economy can, that's not what I'm saying either, because I think it's important to keep the balance of understanding where everyone's coming from in a situation like this. But finances are not something that people like to talk openly about, and they don't want, and of course, no one wants people to think that you're struggling or whatever, but this is where this is going to change things and make people really take a deeper look at it. As I've mentioned before, I was an entrepreneur during the whatever it's called, the recession. I almost said regression. Same thing, right? Anyway, during the recession, I was an entrepreneur, but I was single and younger, and in this kind of place of I can work 8,000 jobs if I need to. I had the energy to do that. I'm not in that place anymore. My husband is not in that place anymore. And even if we were, there aren't jobs just hanging out down the street that he can be like, hey, I'll come and bust tables. That doesn't exist right now. And so really, I'm not sure where my emotional standpoint is now, which is interesting. I typically go straight for the anger, but I don't feel scared. I just feel numb, and mainly because I'm getting a glimpse of what this really is like for people. I think Sean, has already started kind of his entrepreneurial pursuit. He was already kind of gaining some momentum anyway. So I do think he's going to be okay. But in my mind, on the way home after I found out, I thought to myself, what if we weren't in a position that I could float us for a couple months, or, he didn't have any other option to get a job and we couldn't pay rent for the next 2 months. Like, what would we do? And I just started to feel a lot of anxiety around that for other people. Just feeling how lucky we are, feeling grateful I was able to make, decisions to save money over the last year or so without even knowing something like this could hit us or the entire world. So, I guess I'm still kind of in the shock of the reality of it, but it makes it way more real where I'm at. I know people that have the coronavirus, so it is real to me, but this makes it real. Like, it just came into our home and is going to disrupt things, and maybe even triggering some trauma for me back in those days of the recession, of how, again, I think we're going to be okay, but remembering what it was like to go, how am I going to pay rent? I don't know where the money's going to come from. And I need to get off my ass and find something, even jobs that don't align with what I want to do or where I want to put my energy. But, these are those, we're there. And we're there for a lot more people than I even want to think about. Just the projection of how it's going to impact so many families and the fears that people are experiencing, not only about whether or not they're going to have a roof over their head, but food. So part of me wants to just, when we're done with this, just start giving back. How can I donate? It was just interesting because I part of me wants to hoard everything now and think to myself, how can I protect my family right in this moment? But at the same time, I think, said it great earlier, and I know you were talking politically, but we mentioned this yesterday. This is an opportunity for people who are going to be leaders moving forward. As things are breaking down, it's kind of like how you build muscles. You break down a muscle in order for it to build. And so as things are breaking down here, people are going to rise depending on what they're passionate about and how they're helping each other. And there's always going to be dicks that are going to take advantage of the system. But for the most part, I think we will see a lot of things coming out of the woodwork and really showing up for humanity, because we've all experienced human suffering right now collectively, which I think is pretty huge.
Yeah, I agree. And we spoke earlier about Sean. So it's sad he's been laid off, furloughed, as you call it, which sounds like a nice thing to me. That word just doesn't do it justice. But that is really sad. And I think that's, it is talked about in the media. And I guess rightly so. The more like virus side of it kind of hurting you or harming you or killing you is rightly prominently talked about more than anything. But for many that won't get it or do get it, but get it mildly, or they don't even get any symptoms, as some people have found, it appears so anyway from the things I've read, and your family may be untouched by it by the end of this. But a lot of people are going to be affected beyond the illness side of things, of, like you said, the finance. And if you're in a position where you've just been let go and you don't have the savings or the investments, to be honest, if you have the investments, they're probably plummeting right now, as mine did.
Exactly.
I had to take money out because I lost quite a bit, and I needed the money, so I couldn't kind of leave it in to go up, as investments hopefully will. So a lot of people have been hit financially, and that's also a really scary and anxiety provoking thing, whether you have anxiety or not. If you suddenly don't feel stable, you can pay your rent or your mortgage, your bills, then life becomes a whole different kind of difficult. And if you have OCD on top of that, then it's a perfect storm. So I guess I just wanted to acknowledge that, because that's something I didn't acknowledge earlier, that if you're financially affected, that's horrible, as well as physically affected. And I guess that you were touching there a bit on opportunity, and I don't want to go on too much of this, and this isn't my advice as a therapist, this is more Stuart as the individual. One of my friend is a business owner in Ireland, and he we speak most days, and some days he'll be like in a really good mind, and then the next minute he loses a client or something, because obviously people are being affected and they're pulling business left, right, and center. He then goes into this place of like real fear and like worrying that he's not, the businesses get to a point where he can't pay his bills, or he's got a couple months like run through, as in like runway where he can pay everything if he lost all his clients. But depending on how long this goes on for, there's all that uncertainty. And then other days he'll call me. That's what I like about him. He's very he'll try and find the, not necessarily the positive side, but like the opportunistic side. So he'll read various articles from various business people about finding the opportunity in this crisis. Where is the opportunity for your business? It's going to be different for every business, but where's the opportunity, and focus on that and try and use it. Like, so his business, I won't go into it because I don't want to give too much away, but it's a service business. It's helping people in the fitness industry. So he's now focusing on all his time on adding value and being a leader in his industry. so that when it's all said and done, silver lining for these, as Elise just put, when it's all said and done, people will know that he was there for them in their time of crisis, and they'll put their business back into him because he was there for them when no one else was. So he's focusing on being the leader, creating opportunities, creating information that can help his clients, which are businesses themselves, be successful. And I really like that. And I guess I just wanted to share that for any business owners. Just try and be there for everyone else. Be a good human. Be of service to the world, and people won't forget that. And people will look after you. Not always, but generally. So yeah, I just think that was worth sharing, because it's easy to get focused on the doom and gloom instead of asking where is the opportunity. And that's a bit different. If you're an employee, it's harder maybe to have that mindset. But if you are a business owner, then try and focus there. Yeah.
Well, I think another way of putting that is, and I've thought a lot about this after the initial shock. And Felice, hey Felice. Thanks for being here. Felice did write the silver lining, and just so you know, Felice, like, I wrote this before you wrote that, but like, I did post a thing on Instagram that was just like, right now I don't want to look for the silver lining. I'm seriously not saying anything about you, Felice. And you know me well enough to know that. But I think the important thing was, there are, I would say right now, in looking for, and I think it's important to say this, with the change in how, and the uncertainty that people are experiencing emotionally through all this, and financially, and what are things going to look like Phillipson said, the ambiguity of not knowing where the finish line is. So you have no idea how much longer the race is, and so how do you self-preserve while you have to continue racing? It's, I think my message wants to be like being gentle with people, and wherever they're holding that space, that emotional space. And that's what I'm not finding as much. I think I was sharing this with Stu earlier, that when I found out about Sean, losing his job, I was in some way, like, I found my brain trying to find the silver lining. Now, this is, I've been an entrepreneur since I can remember. And so I always look at things like this that happen as opportunities. And so even though I would be scared, I can push into the uncertainty and go, okay, well, what do I need to do now to pay my bills in order to now make this new dream happen? Yada, yada, yada. But then when I get home and I click on social media and I see really stupid, shaming, effing comments from people that, because certain people's lives haven't been affected. And it's like, oh, let's project this out to the world where people are losing their jobs, and they may lose their homes, and they may die from corona, and yada, yada, yada. Like, I wanted to set the woods on fire. And so that perspective of mine shifted in just a second, just by seeing that, which it wasn't necessarily that person's fault. It wasn't my fault. It's just, this is such a tough time. Okay, I'm just going to say this as blunt as I can. These are not the times to assert how you think people need to be feeling or how people should react to things. That is my stance. That has been my stance since day one, whether I'm having a great day or whether I'm having a really shitty day or a scared day. Like, this is not a time to think that the way you view the world is the way everybody should view the world. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Full stop. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think for me, like, which is why often I don't like being interviewed and stuff, because I don't want to share my opinion, because because I think I'm smart enough to appreciate that there's so many variables and factors to someone's life, that to when I hear people give advice as if it applies to everyone, it drives me insane, because I'm like, sorry to use that term, it drives me whatever.
It's not very strength-based.
I'm going to say it drives me bonkers.
Wild. I always use wild. I always replace it with wild.
Well, see, wild just reminds me of like people on spring break on a beach, like going wild. So it doesn't quite, that's not how I feel.
Just say whatever you want. I don't care.
Yeah. So it drives me bonkers. But because I'm like, yes, this is kind of good advice when you take it at face value, but when you factor in all the different disabilities people have, disorders people have, social economical backgrounds people have, racial backgrounds, religious backgrounds, upbringing, when you factor in all of these variables, and there's a billion variables, they're just some obvious ones that came to my head.
Mm-hmm.
That advice isn't always that good. So I try and always preface, like, well, I don't put out my beliefs on social media because I don't think I do anymore. But yeah, I also avoid stuff like this. I hate being interviewed because I don't want to give out my belief. But also I'll share it with the pinch of salt and the caveat of it's going to differ to where you're at. This is where I'm at. This is what I believe currently, but I know it's not right for everyone. And like you said, you have to be sensitive to people's emotions of where they're at and what they're feeling, because maybe they need to kind of, I use the term, dwell on it a bit longer, before they take action or do something or change, because maybe there's something in that pain or that emotion that they're yet to learn, and it's going to teach them something. It's kind of my view of it. As I've said at one of the Game Changers events before about anger, it took me several years in therapy to come to terms with that I had anger and therefore was an angry person, and I didn't want to be an angry person or have anger because I saw anger as this disgusting emotion and I didn't want to be disgusting. But when I learned that actually I need to just feel it and allow it and honor that anger and allow it to be there, and not try and change it, but just allow it to kind of teach me what it needs to teach me. And I think it is teaching me and has been, and I have been changing through it. And I think becoming less angry, but the anger comes from a place, and I needed to honor it for it to go away. But I spent years and years and years of my life not acknowledging that emotion. So so I guess to summarize is, absolutely. Some people they don't need to take action right now. They just need to be in their emotions, and kind of work through it,
Well, that's why, A, this is not an interview. B, today I learned people think I'm disgusting because I am angry.
I think you're disgusting.
TIL, I am disgusting. No, but no, I think that's the point of why we're doing this. As a peer and as a human being that's been through monumental human suffering and almost died from it, with my experience with OCD, and then being able to work in the institute settings and meet people that have multiple, poverty and homelessness and addiction and mental illness. My worldview completely changed. And do you know why it changed? Because I just listened. That's it. It didn't take someone to convince me to accept their experience and why they feel the way that they feel. They didn't have to convince me. All I needed to do was hear, this is my own experience and this is how I'm experiencing it. And can you show up for that? And that's, as a peer support specialist, that's what I learned to do. And I think, just to be clear, even though I said my full stop statement earlier, I also listen to stories of people who do think every person should not leave their house for a hot second at all because they have parents that they care about and they're worried because their parents won't stay at home and they worry that their parents are going to die. And that's a real fear for people. And so we're all coming from a specific place. My specific place stems from the recession, watching almost myself losing my house and losing everything and watching some of my friends lose everything. So I'm seeing the situation through that lens. But it's important for us to listen to each other instead of being a keyboard warrior about what you think everybody needs to be doing, because every single one of us is authentically experiencing this based on what we've already been through. And I think that's what people forget. We're approaching this from what we have learned about the world, what our experiences are, and our fears about what the future is going to be. And so there is no room for judgment, even though I'm being incredibly judgy. I'm working on it, though.
No, thank you for sharing. And Felice says she's disgusting as well. She doesn't feel alone anymore,
Yay,
which is good.
believe!
And I think, yeah, well,
Hashtag we hate people.
it's a different side issue, but I think anger is prevalent a lot in OCD, from what I gather anyway, of people's experience, whether it's anger that they had it, have it,
Oh, yeah.
anger at the missed opportunities, or angry
Yes.
at people for not noticing it or even acknowledging it when they noticed it, X, Y, and Z. But that's a whole different interview series. Yeah, like you said, I try and stay off social media for that reason. You know, if it wasn't for the OCD stories, I would have banished social media from my life a long time ago. And that's not to say that there's not a lot of good things that come out of social media, because there is. I just feel, for me, where I'm at in my life, I don't need it, because as much as the good stuff is on there, there's a lot of the bad, of, you know, like you said, people just unnecessarily giving their opinions or judgy comments. Yeah.
I will say, just really quickly, the last few days and being busy with, because I try not to tell people at all, like, or try to give any sort of tips or suggestions or advice about what people should do, because everybody needs to do what they need to do to get through this. And if social media helps people, okay, then go for it. But I will say, in the last few days, because I've been so busy in doing these fireside chats and you know, still taking clients and trying to put as much as I can out on social media, I've actually, I would say, decreased my scrolling and engaging in social media by at least 80%. And it has completely changed my demeanor. It has changed. And I do feel like because of that, in the last couple of days, and hearing the news about Sean and him, you know, getting furloughed, I was able to go, okay, you know, and my brain started going, okay, well then how can we make this into an opportunity? How can we make this, and what you said, yeah, the opportunity, it's, if I had been like on social, like last week, I was just frozen and paralyzed on it, because I think that there's so, when you don't know what the reality is going to be, you need to know as much as you can to be able to formulate how you're going to fit into that new reality. And I do believe that this week we're all sinking into, this is the new reality. Whether that's going to go back to whatever, you know, I don't believe that, but at least for now, we are sinking into, this is how it is now. And there's nothing we can do to change that for this foreseeable future. So how can we adapt?
Yeah. I think that's an important message of, just for life, is learning to adapt. Life changes and can change on a dime. And sometimes for good reasons and sometimes for bad. And in theory, this is a bad reason. For many, it is a bad reason, or a bad thing, if we want to judge it. But yeah, I guess what's my point here? Yeah, and for me at least, again, I'll speak in the terms of I, as opposed to giving general advice, is can get too comfortable with life. And sometimes things can come out of the blue, whether that's a family illness, like someone in my family's ill at the minute. Thankfully, they've had surgery and they should be fine. But, you know, that came out of the blue. There's other things that can come out of the blue: the loss of loved ones, the loss of a job, and a recession, which I think we were due a recession anyway. I think this just triggered it. It probably would have happened within 2 years.
It was going to be
anyway.
2021, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think we were overdue, based on. So in that sense, yeah, there's every 10 years there's going to be a horrible thing called a recession, roughly 10 years. It appears every 100 years there's going to be a pandemic, at least based on 100 years ago there was the Spanish flu. There's always something, you know. Or it could be the development of OCD. If someone's listening and they've just got OCD, you know, I guess, yeah, my point is that life moves for good and bad. It changes all the time. And it's important to almost move with that and adapt. And it doesn't make life any better when the coronavirus is here and we're self-isolated and some of our loved ones are dying or may die or whatever, or we may lose a job. That's horrible. And we can't take that away, but it's kind of part of life as well. And I guess what I'm getting at, anyone interested, is like the Stoic philosophers from like Greece, Greek time, 2000, yeah, roughly 2000 years ago, like Plato, Aristotle, Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius, in fact, I read an incredible article. It was on the Daily Stoic, I think it's the website. And the guy that wrote it was writing about Marcus Aurelius. And if you've watched Gladiator, then you'll be familiar with him. He's like the father figure that gets killed off in Gladiator. Well, he was a Roman emperor, but he was also a philosopher, and he wrote a famous book called Meditations. Really great book. And there was some kind of plague that lasted. It was like something like 10 years. It was a long time in Rome. It was wiping out loads of people, and obviously 2000 odd years ago, they didn't have. But obviously, the medicine we have now, the educated doctors we have now, they didn't have as educated information, I should say. And they didn't have bars of soap in the quantities we have, My history's terrible. They may not have even had soap. I don't know when soap was invented. Put it in the comments. Educate me. But the whole article was about, well, all the rich people, because he was a rich person in that time, all the rich people were running and fleeing for their lives, basically, and like going to the countryside. And arguably, who can blame them? If you have the means, and it was so bad at that time, why wouldn't you? But I think he was the emperor at the time. Either way, he was rich and he was in society and was high profile. He stayed and he helped, and he kept his kind of his door open to help the people. He was there for them. I think for these 2800 BC. So yeah, quite a while before. So that's what, 4,800 years ago. Yeah, thank you. So part of me was worried it was going to be like a new invention, so that would have been worse. But yeah, I guess what I'm getting at was his philosophy is kind of seen as, I believe, Stoic philosophy, which is very practical. It's like life can suck, and if it's going to suck, know it's going to suck and move on with your life. So as Laurie's just Googled it as well. Soaphistory.net for anyone interested.
Hey, if you don't know what you're going to do with your life right now, create something like soaphistory.net.
Oh, exactly. But yeah, I don't know where my point was going, but it was like, what was my point of that? I've been thrown off by.
Well, you were talking about how, he stayed behind.
Yeah. It's just the mark of Stoic philosophy, which is actually where CBT was somewhat pinned on Stoic philosophy. Well, I believe it was REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, which came just before CBT. That was heavily influenced by Stoic philosophy. And then CBT was based on parts of Stoic philosophy, which is, CBT is all about changing the way you think, looking at things differently, getting new evidence, seeing things for what they are, and that's what Stoic philosophy was about. I think it might have been Marcus Aurelius, or one of the Stoic philosophers. Before he left his home every day, he kind of made the acknowledgement of, I'm going to meet idiots today who are going to annoy me. And the fact that he acknowledged that of when he met said idiots, that's whatever term we want to use, mean people, that's not an idiot, but you know what I mean? When he met them, he expected it. He could deal with them, and it didn't upset him too much because he knew they were coming. It's that whole, like, when I drive a car, sometimes I can get road rage, but the days I drive my car and know that there's probably going to be people that aren't going to signal, aren't going to take the corner properly or turn lanes or whatever it is, that's going to really irritate me. But the days that I know that that's going to come, when it happens, I'm like, oh, well, and I let it go. When I'm not in that mindset and someone doesn't signal and they come in front of me, I lose my mind, and it's, I
am a witness.
You can't prepare for all of this. But I guess what I'm saying is the Stoics kind of look at life as life can suck. And I think we too often get in this place of, no, life can be happy and sunny.
But life should be.
Yeah, life should be soapy and glossy. Soapy, that's in my head now. Glossy and smooth and whatever, and like sparkly. And yes, life can be that. It can also be the reverse. And I think for me, it's acknowledging all of the emotions and all of the things life can be. And that is reality. and then when things are bad, it's not as bad because we're like, I kind of expected something bad was going to happen, and when things are good, oh, that's great, things are good, let me enjoy it for now, and not be like, and then something bad comes up, oh, but life was so good, why did this recession have to happen at this time? Unfortunately, it had to happen for whatever reason. So now that it's happened, it just means it doesn't take away the suck when it sucks, it just makes it suck a tad less, in my opinion, because you expected it. But also, I want to just say, well, just expecting the good as well, because if you don't expect the good, then you become one of those people that like life is meaningless and it's pointless and it's horrible, and you don't want to be stuck in that place. So it's about seeing the good, the bad, the ugly, and the in between, and being
or
okay.
just waking up with zero expectations and dealing with whatever hits you.
Very Buddhist.
But I think to full circle everything that you just said, back to the OCD, the ERP, I mean, isn't that how we as individuals with OCD and anxiety, isn't that how we manage OCD? Is it's going to suck when OCD shows up, but I already know inside of me, I have the tools, I have the knowledge, I have the practice to know what to do when it does. And so that's how people learn to manage OCD. I think that it's I think the struggle probably, and I hear this from a lot of people that I work with and peer support, the struggle right now isn't necessarily that, it's just more of the, well, yeah, but I was managing OCD over here and now all of this shit is falling apart, or like there's all this uncertainty over here. So how to translate that over into the real world. And I think that what you were saying makes sense. And for all of us to look at it as just accepting that this is the new normal. And even if we don't know where that new normal is, my takeaway is allow whatever emotions to come up, let them be there, and maybe don't judge them as good or bad. I think that's, we can be guilty of that. If you're angry, it's bad. If you're sad, it's bad. If you're not happy and you're not grateful, then you suck, So taking all that away and just saying, I've had moments today where I was grateful. I was on the incline. Yeah, there were people there, and I don't want to hear any shit about social distancing. It felt great to be able to walk past people and smile and wave or say, how are you doing today? It felt great to have that human connection. The interesting thing.
While keeping your distance.
Sure. The interesting thing was I always want to go to the incline when no one is there. At any other time. Anybody that knows me knows that. I will go at night with my headlamp on so I don't have to be around people. I could not wait to get there today because I knew there were going to be people. Because I could see people doing things. I could hear people laughing. I could see people talking and chatting or like running up the stairs. And I got to walk past them, and I got to as I'm drinking my water, wave at someone. To me, that was a very interesting mind shift. And showed me how I'm starting to adapt. Do I think when all this is over, I'm going to go to the incline and want people to be there? But it did feel interesting to have that shift in perspective based on what's going on in the entire world right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also right now where we are more isolated and stuff, and there is this kind of doom and gloom, whether that's right or not, it can feel quite isolating. And quite lonely. So like an example of, when I usually hate going grocery shopping. I always buy it online because I don't have to see people in the grocery store, just because I'm someone who I need to get in, get out, and and people kind of dilly dally, and it frustrates me, but it's my own issue. But I can't buy online at the minute.
Angry person.
Yeah, because people have booked online delivery slots for the next month, and I could usually before this get it the next day. So I have to go in the store now. And I went in on Monday and I did my grocery shop, and it was the first time that I actually enjoyed grocery shopping, because everyone, apart from one lady that I don't know what was going on for her. I'm trying not to judge her because maybe she had a severe anxiety disorder or some other issue, or she was just a mean person. But she had this massive trolley, or whatever you call it.
Buggy.
Shopping cart, whatever. She was pushing it, nearly barreled me over Like, she didn't have anything in it. She was going all the way through the store, and I kind of followed her, not intentionally, but just I was going that way. She kind of turned. She was like almost hitting other people. She had this face like she was chewing a wasp. And she got to the rice, and she grabbed 2 bags, 10-kilogram bags of rice, which are, by the way, like, where's my cans? I can't even do it justice, right? It's like up to my knee in height type of thing, right? She loaded 2 of them, and I think she was going for a third. But by this point, I was like, I can't handle this lady, because I don't know what's going on for you. You could read the anxiety on her face, but it was like she just had hatred for everyone. So apart from her, I just want to tell that story, but I'm trying not to judge her, because I'm sure she just needs love and, a therapist. But
she was chewing a wasp.
Yeah, it's my favorite expression. But then everyone else in the store was like, we were trying to keep our distance, but everyone would like kind of make jokes as they were picking things up about things not being on the shelf, or like as they passed you, trying to avoid you, kind of making like jokes that like, oh, shouldn't get too close, and that never happens in the grocery store. So that, for me, that just shows you how, although it's a horrible time, and for some people it's particularly horrible right now, humanity does come together at times like this. And I've seen so much online over the years of like these negative comments of people saying like, if there was it was around the time actually of the potential World War III with America and Korea, and then America and Iran, not judging. But and people would put comments of like, oh, we would never come together like we did during World War II or World War One, and I'm like, I don't buy that. I absolutely, I don't buy that. And for me, the amount of there's a few scam artists that have come out as a result of this, which is disturbing. But generally, the amount of people I've seen come together, create apps to help old people have conversations with people so they're not lonely in their place, getting groceries to old people, the kindness that I saw in the grocery store, and the happiness almost levels within this suffering, people were connecting like they weren't before.
We take advantage of human connection. We take advantage of it. And then when it's gone, you feel the distance, and it doesn't feel good.
No, I agree. And so I guess I just wanted to raise that, not as a silver lining, maybe it is, I don't know, but just as we were talking about leaders will rise in times like this. And I think humanity will too. And I think the longer it goes on, hopefully it doesn't go on for that long, but the longer it goes on for, I think you'll see more acts of kindness. You'll see more acts of frustration and anger, I'm sure, but you also see more acts of kindness and connection and spirit, and people coming together. And I just think that's something that needs to be mentioned. One other thing, and I'm rambling now, but that came to me the other day was when in that week where I was really worried, I was watching the news more than I probably should have. I was just thinking of like Syria, and they're still being bombed now as far as I gather, but that's gone on for however many years now, and especially at its worst. I think the worst is over. Hopefully it is, but if it's not, that's really sad. But the fear I felt sitting in my apartment of like, there's this invisible invader kind of coming for me, which is what it felt like, which was, the coronavirus, and all these other fears around family, etc., and job security and all this. And looking out, because I can see London from my window, and like almost seeing the lack of activity and the movement, which is you never see. London's not like New York, but it's a busy city, and I really gave me empathy. Like, it wasn't a silver lining of, well, thank God I'm not in a war zone. It was just empathy for the people of Syria, of like, and I know the British have dropped bombs I'm pretty sure we have, as of other countries. So, I feel bad about that, but I don't know. It was just empathy for them of what must it be like to, yes, most of them probably did lose their jobs and their businesses, because their businesses were probably flattened by bombs and stuff, and they couldn't go to their job because you could get bombed or shot or whatever. So you had all that job security on a mass scale, whereas at the minute, a lot of our jobs are holding up, and it hasn't gone to where a lot of people have lost. I'm not belittling the people it has, but I'm grateful it hasn't gone to like 75% of the population. But yeah, it was just empathy of what they go through, and it put things in perspective of me of, yes, this is going to be really tragic if it affects me or my family in a bad way, and it's tragic for the people that it has. But like the big cities in Syria, they were all affected by the fear of these bombs coming down, of will it hit my house?
The fear of uncertainty.
Will I have a job? And that again is not to belittle what people are going through with this, but it just gave me a level of empathy I never had for that country, and for any country that goes through kind of a war on that scale. And I don't know why I bring that up. It was really profound for me. I always had empathy for those people, but I almost felt like a sliver of what they were going through, what are going through.
Yeah. So then I'll have you have the last word as we close out. But some of the things that I heard from you today are finding the opportunity in the crisis, but also the ability, or just looking for the leaders, and also, which I think you're being really optimistic, humanity to rise. I will trust in your optimism that humanity will rise, and we will see maybe even a greater connection, but also the opportunity here to find empathy for situations we never thought that we were going to be in. So that's what I've taken away from this and chatting with you today. But I would love to hear your final thoughts, what you want to give out to people listening that maybe are feeling scared and uncertain and at this time as well.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing before I give that on what you just said around humanity. To me, this, our Prime Minister 2 days ago, I think, or yesterday, put out a message asking for 250,000 volunteers to help our National Health Service, to go into hospitals, to work for free. They don't have to have medical training, I don't believe, but just to do whatever. Maybe they have to sweep floors, maybe they have to pack supplies or give whatever, I don't know, but it's not going to be like they did basically ask for more doctors and more nurses as well, and about 4,500 doctors and nurses have come out of retirement to go back into help. But he asked for 250,000 volunteers, which is a lot of people, bearing in mind we have 66 million people in our country. Healthy volunteers he asked for, and I guess that's because he didn't want people that were like, if they got the coronavirus it would be bad. But even so, he's asking for people to work for free and to go to a place where there are people, we know that people are infected, so there's a good chance you'll probably catch it as a volunteer, hopefully not, but and I was like, yeah, that's really cool, but there's no way he's going to get 250,000 people working for free and putting themselves at risk. I thought maybe they know that too, but they've just said 250 and all they need is actually 100,000. So if they ask for 250, they might get 100,000. That whole like aim higher, and even if you miss, you'll still aim quite high. They got like something like 450,000 people offered a volunteer within a day.
Wow.
And that,
oh my gosh,
that amazes me. I considered it, and then I was like, nah, I do too much with the podcast. That is my volunteering. But
yeah,
but,
well, and you have a situation in your house, you have a child on the way.
Yeah. So but that moved me. That was like, wow, people are stepping up. This is like in World War II when people did step up and help and do the jobs if they couldn't go fight. People rallied together, and I think that is really moving for me and really hopeful for society. At least my society. I'm sure it's happening in other countries, but I guess, yeah, so if you're struggling right now, I mean, it's perfectly normal. Like, I feel for you. Like, I guess know that you're not alone, not just from an OCD point of view, but the general public are so unbelievably triggered by this on average. I mean, I've spoken to many therapists that have said like it's like seeing OCD on a mass scale.
Yes.
There's all these people that don't have anxiety disorders doing compulsions, bulk buying toilet roll when the virus doesn't even make you poop yourself. I haven't been able to buy toilet roll for 3 weeks. I'm having to ration it. I
have 12 industrial rolls right back there in that closet.
Well, you're the problem. But
No, I bought it off Amazon app because I couldn't find any in my house.
yeah, fair enough. Whatever helps you sleep at night. But the my point is, like, everyone's finding this hard, right? So the fact that you have OCD probably makes it harder. And yes, there are some people with OCD. I had one lady message me saying, I feel like actually she's gone through treatment. It's been quite successful. And she said, I actually feel like this is a superpower because everyone's freaking out around me and I'm relatively calm.
Mm-hmm.
She's, of course, as far as I'm aware, doing all the things the government's saying to keep herself safe.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, she understands there's nothing else she can do. So she's kind of letting it go. And for some people with OCD, that this is their therapies coming back into use. You know, when people like Stephen Hayes and others have said on my podcast, like, if you've had a mental illness and you've had treatment and it's helped, you're better than normal, you know, because the general public doesn't have any of these skills. They're effectively, they're struggling. And maybe you're not through therapy yet, or maybe you've gone through therapy and you're still struggling regardless. That's okay. This is a tough time. Kind of be there for yourself, do what you need to, have some kind of, try and have some self-compassion for yourself, that don't beat yourself up, basically. And just also, I think, just try and focus on work that's meaningful for you, even if it's tough to focus on it, or reaching out and helping others. You know, and I think that can help take our minds off our suffering if we can focus on others sometimes. But yeah, I guess the takeaway message is, if you are really struggling right now, obviously reach out for therapists and stuff, but otherwise you're not alone, and just allow yourself the time.
No, I agree. And in every single fireside chat we've done this week, it's interesting how people with OCD and whether they've been through therapy or not. And what I've noticed too is it's kind of like, okay, there's this coronavirus thing that everybody's freaking out over here. But anyway, about what I'm obsessing about. So there is a separation, and I feel that too. It's just, getting caught up on the emotional suffering of others and how we're managing that. But yeah, I'm going to close out. Thank you, Stu, for being here as always with your wise words and your ability to bring in different quotes and things to help us put things into perspective. Always appreciative. And for those of you that have been here, thank you so much. This has been really fun and really helpful for me. So if it's helpful for me, I hope it's helpful for you. Oh yeah, and go to the OCD stories, especially if you want to hear more about the coronavirus. Stu just did a podcast with Jonathan Grayson. It's a bit triggering.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back, but it's good.
But he is in general, so that's good. But you can find out more at the OCDstories.com. And of course, if you'd like to support Game Changers, we are a nonprofit. We're at OCDGamechangers.com, or you could head over to Patreon.com and search us at OCD Game Changers. Tomorrow we will be here again live at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Mr. Aaron Harvey. That should be interesting. I can't wait to hear his take on things and how he is coping in the big city of New York. So anyway, thank you for being here. And thank you again for all the feedback you're giving me. We are going to somehow continue to do these, and especially in supporting people as we move through this in the next few weeks and maybe even the next few months. We will be here with you. We're in this together, and you are part of us as well. So thank you again, and I will see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye now.
Thank you.